All right, so we'll get going here. Thanks everybody for joining. My name is Angie Sanchez. I am a PhD student in the Department of Geography, Environment, and Spatial Sciences at Michigan State University. My research focuses on increasing access to breastfeeding support resources in Indigenous communities. Um, as a result, I met Kim and Cami kind of before I figured that part out, but because I took the formerly known as Indigenous Breastfeeding Counselor training program back in 2019. And when I was there, that's where I kind of had my moment, like, oh my gosh,
I remember that.
this is what I'm gonna get you guys to come back, and we're gonna do this in these communities, and yeah. So I applied for a grant from the Michigan Health Endowment Fund to bring Kim and Cami back to Michigan, to 6 different Indigenous communities in Michigan. And what happened there? The camera. Oh, okay.
She's back.
Scared me. I was like, was that our camera?
Sorry.
Anyway, so as part of the project, Kim and Cami are doing the Indigenous Lactation Counselor training program here in Michigan, but we get a lot of requests from non-Indigenous healthcare providers, mostly like nurses and folks that do like home visitor type programs, but even some lactation counselor positions that are asking to take the training, but they're not Indigenous. And, that training is not a cultural competency training. It is a training by Indigenous people for Indigenous people to arm them with the information they need to be able to counsel um, people in their own communities. And so I wanted to offer a way to um, to to have offer some courses or things that were open to non-Indigenous people, and specifically to healthcare providers. And
Giggling for no
these two, I don't know what they're laughing at.
Cammy's tummy again.
Is it already? It's her tummy.
We're good.
Anyway, sorry. So these webinar series that's why I brought that up. I'm like, let's find a way to, produce some things that healthcare practitioners could be a part of and to learn from. So that is what got us here. So with that, today's this webinar is Indigenous birthing practices, correct?
Yep.
Sorry, because we have so many. We're always like, wait, what are we doing next? So that's what today is. We do have a panelist on who I do not know myself. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass the mics over to Kim and Cami, let them introduce themselves, and they're going to facilitate conversation with our panelist, Aura. And we may have somebody else joining later, but I'm not sure. But we'll see.
Yeah.
No, I don't think
Okay.
she's on yet. No.
Okay.
So thank you.
All right. Good afternoon. My name is Kimberly Morsales. I am Danae from Navajo Nation, born in Tuba City. I'm also a lactation consultant, been doing this work for over 12 years. I started as a WIC peer counselor in 2009, and then I transitioned to hospital-based lactation. I've been there for almost 10 years, and then I moved from Arizona to now my new uh, location in Northern California, which is the Hupa tribe, Yurok, and Kairu people. And now I am doing some community lactation education to various communities and throughout Indian country. Work with Navajo Nation Breastfeeding Coalition, which is one of our dear friends, Ora Nez, is on the panel. She'll introduce herself as well. Um, and yeah, I've been doing this work with Cami since the end of 2017. And it's been amazing work that we love to do and share our knowledge. So I'm really happy to be here. And I'm really happy that the webinar series is an approach that you decided to take, Angie, because this has been really fun. And we giggle and just be silly, but we get a lot of content in. And I'm just really happy to share with other non-Indigenous people to understand our people and how better they can take care of our people when it comes to breastfeeding, and even some of the birth practices we talked about since we started this webinar series yesterday. So,
Cool. All right. And I'm Petuashte Mitakiapi. I'm Cami Goldhammer. Good afternoon, my relatives. I'm Sisseton Wapton from South Dakota. I live in Duwamish Territory, also known as Seattle, Washington. And I'm a lactation consultant, licensed clinical social worker, and a full spectrum Indigenous doula, and one of the co-instructors for the Indigenous Lactation Counselor training. And we're so excited to have you here with us today, Aura. Thank you so much. Rocking the print.
Of course.
Aura, do you want to just introduce yourself how you would normally introduce yourself to community, and share a little bit, and then Kim and I can always fill in if you miss something that we think should be in your introduction, because Aura is awesome.
Aura is an OG in lactation.
Yeah.
She's been doing this for a long time.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ornez. My Dishkijni Nishla Tatnisani Ebashichin, Tuditini Edishnella Tobaha Edashiche, Kuta Eya Sananishla. I'm originally or born and raised in Fort Defiance, Arizona. My family is originally from Pinon, Arizona, Burnt Corn Valley. I was raised here and I have married, I think 21 years, 21 years after 20, you lose count. I have 5 children, breastfed them all for 3 years each. Miss breastfeeding. My oldest is 22. She's gonna be 22 this coming month. And my youngest is 4. So I have a 4, 7, 11, 17, and a 22-year-old. So big gap. So breastfeeding spacing does work. So I'm gonna say that. I've worked for the Navajo Nation WIC nutrition program. I've been a WIC peer counselor since 2000, the latter part of 2007. So I've been going on for about 12, 13 years. I originally used to cover just Fort Defiance area, the Fort Defiance WIC, but now probably in the last, since April, I'm covering 12 or 6 clinics, Navajo nationwide. I'm covering Fort Defiance, Ganado, Chimney, Saline, Kayenta, Tuba City, and Pinon. So a vast area I cover for the WIC program. I counsel prenatal and postpartum women. We are currently still closed as a WIC program, so I call all of my mommies and over the phone, do assessments. I work with the local hospitals that they are being seen at and trying to build up that rapport so that I can have better access to giving them good health care and giving them that standard of care for moms. I've in this new journey that I've picked up for 3 clinics, I've noticed that a lot of things are missing and a lot of disparities in those really rural areas. So learning, I'm a certified lactation counselor. I'm a certified lactation educator. I've been trained as a doula, and also I'm working on to kind of go more into the doula part of it, but breastfeeding is kind of hanging on to me right now. But that's who I am, and thank you for having me.
Awesome. Yeah, we're so lucky to have you today. And like Kim said, Aura is an OG in lactation. I mean, I don't know when peer counseling started in the United States. Honestly, like I'd love to, someday we'll have to look that up. But Navajo Nation was one of the earliest adopters of the peer counselor position and model in WIC. And so Aura and our other sister Amanda Singer were probably some of the first peer counselors, honestly, in the United States. And they're both very, 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 very skilled lactation providers. And yeah, you all know so much and do so much and have been in it for a really long time. And, you know, or a bulk of the folks, this webinar series is really geared toward, because it's paid for like a Michigan endowment, and that's been, a bulk of the recruiting, although we have some folks that have been joining us from other areas for the webinar series, but it's largely for, Michigan providers and community members. And so I think it would be helpful for folks when you were naming the area. So the Navajo
Yeah.
Nation reservation is the largest reservation in the United States. It covers
Um,
3 states, right?
I
I
think
mean,
four,
yeah, you
four
talk
states.
4
Yeah.
states. Talk about like how big it is, and then Aura, you can describe like the area that you cover as a single peer counselor. Yeah,
Yeah. So how big is the reservation? Or I know it's pretty big. I know we have about 400,000 members, especially after the pandemic when, people started to enroll again.
Yeah.
You know,
I think a lot of it it's being compared to probably, I think the state of Virginia. I
yeah,
think that's the
what I've heard
comparison.
too.
State of Virginia, and I think the Navajo Nation always sticks in my head is we only have 13 grocery stores. So it's such a vast area. I was trying to do an analogy of the vast area of the areas that I cover. It's huge. I think the area, yeah, of the state of Virginia. I mean, right now, I think at the most, prenatal women that I'm seeing right now or trying to see and try to make contact with is probably close to at least 380 women a month. And then that doesn't include our our partially nursing moms or exclusively nursing moms. That's another number. My last count was probably a little over, probably 250. So I'm trying to devise a game plan, of how to contact these women every month, just to at least cover or touch base with them to know that the program is there. Our WAKE program has been closed since the pandemic started, so everything's over the phone. And we come to learn that we're going to slowly transition to opening back up this coming Monday. So we're going to see how that works. And seeing clients again, yay. I mean, I'm kind of excited for that. I'm hoping to see some women, but a lot of it is just a lot of intake and just the regular procedures of bringing clients in. But as far as myself seeing clients, I'm going to cross my fingers and hope to see some women. And then there's a big difference between the women I see here in Fort Defiance compared to the women I see or call in Kayenta and Pinon area. Those rural areas are really, really being missed in terms of lactation. And in terms of assuring them that they can breastfeed, postpartum care. So along the way, I'm learning that because before I just had Ganado, Chinling, Saline, and and Fort Defiance. And in terms of the rural areas, those areas were more urban. I mean, the hospital was right down the road. All the offices and different service providers were right down the road. So it kind of had their similarities. Now that I'm looking at like Pinon area, the nearest hospital is probably an hour away. And then when I'm looking at talking to these women, I try to really kind of touch base with women who are high risk. When they get flown out, man, it's either like Albuquerque, and that's probably 4 to 6 hours for their families. And then Phoenix is probably about maybe 6 to 7, depending on which route they take. So it is a vast area, and just trying to assure them that things will be okay and the services that we can provide is I'm finding that really challenging right now in terms of working with the staff and also working with the service providers out there and what they can provide for them. But yeah, it's big country.
Yeah. Well, you all are amazing. And again, like, even though this is a bulk of the folks on here from Michigan and it's for Michigan, like these are really common challenges across Indian country, like being rural, being underserved, not having enough medical systems or care to take care of our people, WIC peer counselors being completely stretched, to the brim. There is under no like I just can't even imagine a single person being responsible for a caseload of 500 plus
Yeah.
people. And like you do amazing work, but this is an issue across Indian country, and
Yeah.
we're all affected. And so it's
It's been an issue for many years.
for a
and-
long time.
and
Yeah.
for a long time. Or I also want to ask you, as far as like, I know you and I are around the same circle when it comes to the work we do in Indian country, specifically Navajo Nation. And right now there's a huge push towards traditional birth practices and doula work. And I know that there is a doula collective that I'm a part of, and I haven't done a whole lot of doula work. But I definitely, uh, being in conversations with you all, how has that changed since? Because I know for a long time, Fort Defiance is where you have your baby. Albuquerque, Phoenix is where we have babies. But when it comes to like, I know Amanda and you have done some work with doula families. How do you see that change over the last, I would say, 2 years? And how's that impacted breastfeeding? Has it, how does it impact? Has it gotten better with with our communities there? What do you see? Because I know Navajo Nation Coalition is doing a lot of work with Changing Women Initiative too, with birth assisting and traditional work. I know we don't talk about it. I don't see postings about it because when I talk to Amanda, there's a lot of birth doula that you guys do. And I know for us, we don't talk about it. We don't explain and go into deep conversations about what happens at a birth, because a lot of those practices are, sacred, right?
Yeah.
Can
I
you
think
share
with I would say in the past 3 years, in my area, it's becoming an option. Like how Amanda's advocating for it. It's becoming an option, and a lot of women are learning to take that option to birth at home. So I'm not seeing it very much in the rural areas, and I'm sure it's happening on an emergency basis. But I am sharing that with my clientele that there is this option that you can birth at home, that we are a growing organization with the doulas. Because some of them, they don't have us, they're more traditional and they know more of their language, their heritage. And some of them are afraid of the healthcare system. Some women I've come across, they're wary of the healthcare system because of a previous pregnancy, what happened to them, and their risk that was involved. And to hear that there is another option that they can take is, I think, is resonating now. That is something that they want to hear more about. Here in our area, I know we see, like in our clinic, we see some women who are taking that option, and then they still, like for example, what happens is they'll do their initial intake at the local hospital. The hospitals are always referring, no matter their status, they'll refer to the WIC clinic. The WIC clinic does the assessment if they meet the qualification to be on WIC. So some women that already know they're going to birth at home, they still take the option, come see us at WIC and go through the process because they know that nutrition education is there. And sometimes after they deliver, I'm taking more notice that maybe within 6 months they won't be a part of the WIC program no more, kind of fall off the grid, and we don't hear from them. But we do see them in community, and they sometimes will come back after, and that will be their birth experience. And then the other one, like for our Fort Defiance area, our women have had 3 options to deliver their babies. They can deliver in Fort Defiance, which is a 638 hospital, kind of like it kind of fell off the IHS, and they're kind of their own hospital. they can go to Gallup Indian Medical Center, which is an IHS hospital. And they also have the option of delivering at a private hospital, which was Rehoboth, which they don't do deliveries anymore as of, I think, last week. So they have those options available to them. And then I've known women who kind of bounce around just because of their birth experience. They don't want to be at this hospital because of what happened to them. They want to try this one. And then some of them will come back. So it's a very different story. And those women are kind of more open to hearing about birthing at home because they want that experience of having control of their bodies and control of how they birth and who's going to be there. So along the way, what I'm trying to do now is when I educate during their latter part of their third trimester, I'm trying to talk with the hospitals and say, what is the birth experience like? Because I want to educate women of how they should be prepared, what they need to know about, what they should bring, who they should bring, and because it's very, very different now. And that's something I'm learning along the way. And so I want to share that with them. And I also sometimes will share my birth experiences because each of my babies, I had a different experience with each of them. Even though I birthed them all in the same hospital, each one was so very different and my care was so very different from the next baby.
Wow. Yeah. So one of the things that we're like talking about with this kind of session around traditional birth practices is it's not like meant to be like a voyeuristic, like let's teach, these folks like what we do because they are, it's ceremony and sacred. But I'm wondering, especially like for you, and you can share what you want or around like your experience as a traditional Navajo woman, right? Delivering in a hospital and how you were able to or not able to incorporate some of your traditional practices or beliefs in the hospital and bring it there, and how that worked for you, if you were able to felt comfortable talking to your providers about it, or was there things that you didn't share? And again, you can just share what you want, because I think a lot of the folks on this webinar today are healthcare providers. And so thinking about how they can be supportive of Native people delivering in the hospitals, because bottom line is most of us deliver in hospitals. So, only about 1% of births in the general population occur outside of a hospital. And that is a bulk of it is white women, are delivering of that 1%. And so there's, very few Native people that are delivering outside of hospitals. So most of us are in there. So how can healthcare providers kind of help support some of those traditional birth practices that we might have that we can bring to the hospital? And maybe how do you talk to parents about that too, as a peer counselor, knowing like, hey, you might want to do this at your birth. And this is, I hope that.
With I had, like I said, 5 kids. Each one was different. Kind of go through a little crash course of my first one. She was born at 37 weeks gestation. I was flown out at 35 weeks to Good Samaritan, Phoenix, stayed down there. Very determined mom. I said, I'm not going to give my birth my baby in a city. Take me back up to where I want to birth my baby. It took 5 safe rides over a course of a day to bring me back home. I remember it was like a safe walk to Conwood, and then another one at Flagstaff, and another one at Winslow, and then another one at Lepton, and then one finally brought me back. So I was just like, I'm not birthing in a city. So I had my daughter 37 weeks, and then I think I had a kidney infection that sent me preterm. That's why I was down there. My second one was my most healthiest, or I had her at 40 weeks. I teased her a lot. I said, you were 1 minute late. She was born at 8:01 a.m. She was, I didn't have any issue. I think I had a lot of kidney infections or UIs with her, UTIs. My third one, my son, I got flown out at 18 weeks. I had kidney stones. I was at UNM. I only stayed a week or two and then I came back. the ending part of him, I was at the healthiest of my pregnancies because I remember at 39 weeks, I went camping with my Girl Scout troop, camped out and butchered a sheep for my Girl Scout troop at 39 weeks. And I remember the elders that were around us were yelling at my husband because I was contracting. They're like, take her to the hospital. And he's like, no, I'm not. He's like, no, I'm not messing with her. She'll breathe it out. When she's ready, she's ready.
Navajo woman.
Yeah, so I did that. And then,
Butchering a sheep, leave her alone.
yeah, I'm not gonna, I don't know how to butcher anyways. That's her deal. So that was with my son. And then my last one, I had to get induced at 41 weeks. Or with my son as well, I was induced. I was losing fluids. My fourth one, I had to get induced again because the doctor had a concern. Or no, that was my fifth one. So I got induced with her at 41 weeks. She was getting bigger inside me. That one was really a trial because I literally almost went into postpartum depression because I was fighting with the pediatrician. He wanted me to give her formula.
Mm.
To have a midwife come in and advocate for me because I was exhausted and I was alone. And she came in for me. And I remember she chewed out the pediatrician. He left. So I was able to continue breastfeeding with her with the help of Amanda, my husband, when they brought me a pump. Um, and then my last one, I had choleostasis. So I was induced at 37 weeks and I had her and she was, they were all healthy babies, but I remember I had these little, a lot of it was just the kidney part. And I hear stories from women like what's going on with them and what happened. For me, my options, I wish I knew more about the sash belt because I know one of our hospitals in Chinling, they teach their women about the sash belt, birthing with the sash belt, wrapping with the sash belt.
Do you want to describe what a sash belt is for folks?
Yeah. So you
might
in the
not know.
birthing rooms in Chinling Hospital, on top of the beds, they have a hook up there. It's like a little hook like that. And a sash belt is like a woven, it's usually red, white, and it's a woven belt made out of wool. It's probably about 3 inches wide and probably about 6 feet long. It varies. So during birthing, and this was done also in a Hogan, is they hang the sash belt over the hook on top, and it helps the mom bear down. So usually I know the option with the Hogan is kind of a squatting position, so it helps mom to bear down. I know when I always went into labor, it was me fighting with the midwives or the nurses saying, because I birthed on my side, that was more comfortable for me than my back. And it was always a struggle to tell them this is the way I want to birth because they preferred you on your back. And I always tell my moms, that's not a medical, that's their preference because it's easier for them. And I help them always to advocate in that way. I know our hospital in Fort, I think they have one room that does it. But I wish I knew more about that so I could birth like that with my baby. And then I know our hospital that I birthed at, I always had the delay cord clamping. So that was an option that was already there. I know I was advocating for myself with my last baby, and they were saying, we already did that. We already do that anyways. So I was thankful for that. And then a lot of it, I wish I had learned more about the traditional foods that kind of help you heal. If that was available for me, like the tea, the Navajo tea, the blue corn mush. I know it's available to some extent if it's on the menu. You thankfully get it that day if you birth your baby there. But I wish it was more readily available to me during that birthing time. I know with my fourth one, I wasn't allowed to eat. And I remember I was hungry and I was literally in tears saying, come on out, baby. The only way we're going to eat is if you come out. So please come out. So, and then by the fifth one, I was allowed to eat. So it wasn't such a big thing, but, things changed over the course of time. Now for my oldest daughter, she's with her partner. And I said, when you guys have a baby, your Chase Hogan is there, and I would really like for you to birth at the Hogan. And we know she has that resonating in her mind already. When that time comes, she's gonna have the option to birth, in her Chase Hogan, her grandma's Hogan. So that's a plan we're making as a family. And a lot of it is because we want that serenity of how birthing should be, instead of that tediousness that comes with birth in a hospital. And as I learned through time, that's how I really advocate from women, or telling them, that's something that you can advocate for themselves. And I used to enjoy talking with their partners that come in and say these are things that you can do to advocate for your spouse, and share that information with them. And some of them really pick up on it, and some of them really do those things as well.
Yeah.
Did that answer your question a little bit more?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
awesome. No,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Do you now I know there's like a little bit more doulas in our communities that help with families. I know Amanda has shared some knowledge about when they attend births and things like that, and even do it in a hospital too. And we get questions a lot when we talk about the placenta and the umbilical cord. Does the hospitals do they give that option to families to take it home?
Yeah, I always got that option from the time I birthed my first baby. They gave me the option, do you want to take the placenta, and then the umbilical cord. I always went for the umbilical cord. I didn't do the placenta. My family, I asked my mom, I remember with the first baby, and she was raised off reservation. She was raised in a boarding school, and she was like, I don't know what to do with that. So that was kind of like, okay, so I'm not taking the placenta because I wouldn't know what to do with it either. But later on down the years, I learned, what can be done with it. So again, it's like, okay, maybe with my grandchildren when they come, but I know our local hospital does that. I'm not sure about the private hospitals, but I think the more rural you go, the more of those options are available for women of what they can do. So they incorporate. I know our hospital, they allow like the prayers, and then I think they would I remember they would turn off the smoke alarms in the room, so that the family could smoke, and do the smoking, the tobacco in some rooms in the hospital. So I know that was an option that was available, especially for the end of life. So
Yeah.
that was something that was honored in that way.
Yeah, those are really great reminders because in Michigan, Navajo has 5 hospitals, correct? On Navajo Nation?
I think,
That
yeah,
catch
IHS
babies.
hospitals. Yeah.
Yeah, that catch babies. And
Yeah.
there's only about 13 hospitals within the IHS system that catch babies. So none of them are here in Michigan. So any Native parent in Michigan that's delivering a baby is going to be delivering in a general population hospital, right? So they're going to be not necessarily in their tribal community. And so, the placenta is a really important piece, for the providers that are on here, to recognize that typically, universally, most Indigenous people have kind of teachings around the placenta, and where and usually it is going to come home with a family, and so having an easy process for that,
Yes, I was
right,
just gonna say
where
that for
like
sure.
is something really simple that you can do as a provider to ensure that a Native family is able to easily get their placenta. The fact that it has to be like signed out for and things like that is just like beyond me, because it's literally part of a
Yeah.
parent's body, and and belongs with them. But even if you learn more about those teachings, because like Ora said, not all of us know those teachings or knew those teachings before we have a baby. And so as a provider, you can say, like, if you know someone's Native, you can say like, hey, I know you're Ojibwe, and do your people have some teachings around your placenta? Are you going to want to take it home? And that kind of opens that door for that parent to say, oh yeah, I do, or oh, we do, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Like, let me ask my grandma about it, or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So I
I
love
have a
that.
handout for that.
Oh,
I
cool.
I
Okay.
have a handout that I found from the First Nation, and it's specific for Indigenous people. And there's a questionnaire. They're developing their birth plan, and it says something like, "What traditional practices do you want to bring with you to the birth?" So I always give that to moms during their third trimester and say, "This is something to think about. Talk with your Nolly, talk with your grandma, your trades and masanis, and see what you guys want to do. And remember that the hospital is going to honor what you want to do."
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, I love that. And
Yeah.
then I also, the turning off the smoke alarms, I have memories of
Mhm.
that. And we used to have a hospital in Seattle called Group Health that no longer exists. It was bought by Kaiser, and then they actually stopped catching babies too. But it used to be kind of the spot where Native families went, and
Mhm.
they turned off the smoke detectors when it was time to smudge or smoke
Mhm.
tobacco or something like that. And I know that's a request that's a little hard for some providers, but it is, um, if there's a way to support a family, and especially a smaller hospital has more opportunity to do this,
Mhm.
but support a family and in that piece, it can be really, really helpful. I know for me, like anytime I go to a birth as a doula, like I smudge in the parking lot because that's where I have
Mhm.
to do it, and then I get out and I smudge again, like before I get in
Mhm.
my car. And it's like, I would so much rather be doing that with the
Yep.
family or, something. And so, yeah, like those are both really good suggestions for how providers can support Native families.
Yeah. Before I left Valleywise in Phoenix, we had a manager that came on as a labor and delivery and postpartum manager, and she was actually I think she was Optum, not sure, I don't remember, or Apache. But everyone thought I was her, like, because from behind me, our
Oh my
hair was the
God.
same. And
You
anyway,
are the same.
we all look the same. Our Southwest Indian, we all look the same. Anyway, she because we had a lot of families coming from IHS hospital, because they used to deliver babies there, and they stopped, and then they said they're going to open, and now they're not going to open. So a lot of the families were referred to my hospital where I worked at. And when we start seeing more Native families, which I love to see Native families, um however, I left when it started really picking up with a lot of Native families delivering there. I used to hear like some of the nurses like, why does she want her placenta? Well, because it
Mhm.
wasn't a practice that they did. I'm hoping it is, because when the nurse that came on that was Native, I think she changed that language, that policy. And that's why representation is so important when it comes to staff in the hospital. um, Allowing those practices to still happen in the care of non-native providers, and that a placenta is our traditional practices of what we do with it. I know we don't eat the placenta. We
Yeah,
bury.
we don't do that.
We don't eat it. We bury it, and it's a very special thing that we do. And I think that when they changed it, it just made me feel like, oh, at least they're asking the question, why did she want to take the placenta? So it's like a teaching moment. Um, but I feel like in some areas that's probably not even a thing. Like some areas that they don't even get that opportunity where they just get rid of it. And I've heard
Mhm.
stories say they just tossed it like it was a waste.
They incinerate it
Yep.
without even, because the family might ask, because no one asks for it like
Yeah.
immediately after
Yeah.
birth. It's more like, oh, hey, I'm getting ready to go home. Can I have my placenta? And they're like, oh yeah, we burnt that
Yeah.
yesterday,
Yeah.
like, so again, a really simple thing that a provider can do to really like make a Native family feel seen and cared for and all of that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, one of the other things I was actually going to ask him to talk about was the ghost bead bracelets that that you would offer, because that's another kind of practice that you
Mhm.
incorporated into your practice as an LC.
Yeah.
Um,
So, and Aura can fill me in as well too,
yeah,
because she knows what ghost beads are. So there's cedar beads that come from the trees of the cedar tree or cedar plant. And so cedar is a medicinal plant that we use, I think, universally as Native people for medicine. So you can drink it, you can smudge it. It does a lot for our bodies. Also, we do a lot of ceremonial a Navajo ceremony, we do a lot of it with, just ceremony,
Yeah.
with its usage. So what I did was, because I know when I'm working with families, and we talked about this, I think yesterday, that how birth is a ceremony. And I do believe that when I'm handling a baby, and I know Aura believes this too, is that it's a sacred time, and that breastfeeding is part of that ceremony that we practice as Native people. And so I know that the baby's in a special place, and we birth in a hospital where people die. And so that spiritual energy could still linger, and you're carrying a baby into a world of that as well. So what I did was I had a Navajo woman that was a beater make me cedar bracelets for the baby, and it had stones. Sometimes it was turquoise, sometimes it was coral, and they're little tiny little bracelets. I wish I had brought more, and I need to get more.
I know, I need more too.
Yeah.
Because once Kim did it, I was like, I'm doing
Yeah,
this too.
yeah.
Like,
So yeah, so when my moms were Native, I offered it for them to protect the baby. And the moms really appreciated that protection, and they knew exactly what it was. And so that was my gift to them, having a baby in a place that wasn't made for us. That system was not made for our people to have babies there, even though we do. This is my way of, clearing space and smudging and protecting that time of birth. And so that's where I used it. Even myself would come in a place where that time or space was sacred. I would really protect myself.
Yeah.
And most people that I would talk to in a hospital setting was curious, like, what is that? Why do you do that? And then you share your beliefs, because it's, the more they know, the more they understand. But that was part of what I did in a hospital setting, and I miss that. And hopefully I can do that again. But yeah, cedar bracelets are pretty popular. I don't really see it out here, but I see it a lot of times in Arizona. Bracelets, necklaces. But I've gotten a ton made, and I think the families just loved it. And it didn't even matter which tribe they were from, but they knew exactly what it was, and it's just medicine to protect.
Well, and I think that's part of like gifting in our cultures, right?
Gifting,
And in healthcare, kind of mainstream healthcare, we're kind of discouraged from gifting, right? Because that is can be seen as like a boundary violation or something like that. And this is, kind of along the lines of like, we need to decolonize crying.
I was just
We're
thinking
gonna
that.
we need to decolonize gifting
We're gonna
too.
make that
That
t-shirt.
like, decolonize gifting, and that like we as healthcare providers can give, give a gift to a baby, or to a family. And that's not gonna, especially, for a Native family, that's not gonna be seen as like, ooh, I can take advantage of them now. Like, it's really more of like, oh, this provider like cares about me and sees me as a Native parent. And I know I did that a lot with, gift giving is my like love language. So I love giving gifts, but for our families, at Hummingbird as a doula, so I run a doula program. And when we would have babies in NICU, so we'd, every once in a while have babies that needed to stay in the NICU or things like that. And I would always bring them like a braid of sweetgrass, and I'd bring them a little tobacco bundle to put. And, the first time I did it, it would be something that the NICU would be like, you can't put anything in their bassinet. Like, you can't do that. And then I'd just be like, listen, like this baby needs this medicine, and it's going to be like actually probably a lot more powerful than anything you do. And it does not pose a risk, like we need to do it. And so we would kind of figure out a way to compromise, but that was also something that like, hey, this is actually, I get that there's a rule, but let's go ahead and break the rule and see what happens.
I used to tape the bracelet on the baby's card, baby card. And it was just something I love to do. And I think I gave a couple to some nurses that really found breastfeeding as, special for them as well. But and also too, like, I've had families send me pictures of their babies with their bracelet on at their laughing party, their little laughing ceremony. Or you had a laughing ceremony, right, for your baby?
Yeah, all 5 of my kids.
Do you want to
Um,
share a little bit about that ceremony?
yeah. The laughing ceremony is basically the when the baby has their first laugh. It's very distinctive. I know with all of my babies, it was very distinctive. And usually how tradition goes is the person who made baby laugh for the first time is the one that will host a party or host a ceremony, and they will provide a meal for everyone that attends. It's just like just a meal that they can share with everybody. And a lot of it is just so that baby doesn't learn to be stingy, and baby learns to give and care for community. And during the ceremony, usually for us, we use a traditional Navajo basket, and we put the traditional salt, the sheen that's acquired from the mountains, and you put the salt in the basket. And usually they've kind of like evolve with time, and sometimes they'll have like little goodie bags for baby to give out to every member that has attended their ceremony. And the person will get a little bit of salt, bless themselves with the salt, and then they get their little goodie basket, their little goodie, so that baby learns and they know that baby is happy. And then that I know with education, and when they have new providers or new people in the community, I always hear nurses educating, like they're always, that's us, we always ask, did the baby laugh? And then if we know, like here at WIC, we're like, oh, if we know baby hasn't laughed, you are the fastest person to give that baby back. I always see that.
You don't want to host a party.
Yeah, I always see that.
Like, I'm not hosting this party.
Yeah, you're like, okay, you're big, your baby back. I'll hold baby after baby laughs. So that's always kind of like a joke you hear and see around here. And you always teach, I always see nurses would teach the providers that, like, make sure you don't make the babies laugh, because you'll end up hosting the party, and they explain to them what that means. So I always see these new providers, like, oh no, I can't touch your baby as your baby laughs. So I remember,
so
I hear that's one of the first things that they show them and teach them. But
I was
that's
like the opposite. I tried to, I wanted so badly. I helped the Navajo mom in Seattle breastfeed, and I so badly wanted to make her baby laugh and throw her party. And I spent like 4 hours there trying to make it happen, because the mom really didn't want to do it. She was like, I did my other kids, and I really don't want to host this again. And I was like, I got you, sister. I'm going to do this. And then I tried, and she didn't. And then like 2 days later, mom was like, she laughed when I was changing her diaper. I was like, oh, so sorry.
Yeah. And then I know my dad always used to say, like, if a baby starts crying for an extended period of time, and then there's a word for that, a Navajo word for that. And that means that the baby laughed, and they didn't give the party, they didn't host the party. And now baby's upset about it, and baby's sad because nobody heard baby laugh. And then after that, you have to give. I know my dad is really good about it. He's like, that baby laughed and you guys didn't give a party. So I remember that I hear a lot of elders say things like what my dad would say. I think it was Hatinicha, that they kept crying because you guys didn't acknowledge that they laughed and a lot of it has to do with the holy people, where the holy people kind of like, they hang on to them, and they're in this realm, and then they hang on to them until they laugh. And then when they finally officially laugh, it's when the holy people let go of them, so that now they belong here on earth, and now they have full responsibility for this baby, care for this baby. So you need to celebrate that, and celebrate it in a good way where they learn to share.
Are you gonna cry? No.
So that was something, my dad, every once in a while he'll laugh, and he always made sure his grandkids, that we did that. And that was something we learned early on. And then the other one is, the Cradleboard. We always made my parents were always like, put your baby in a Cradleboard. They really advocate for the Cradleboard. And with my first daughter, I was just kind of like, I don't want to put baby in a Cradleboard. I want a bassinet, I want a crib. So a little bit of time went on, because my baby was a preemie, and about 37, about her gestational age, she, swaddling didn't work, and I was exhausted, and I was tired. Dad was tired, and that all didn't work, and finally my dad, he's like, that baby's crying for the cradle board, you need to put them and connect them to the earth with the cradle board. So my dad had ceremony, bless the cradle board, because our cradle board was passed down. So my nolly made it, and my dad blessed it and upgraded it, and then it was my brother, myself, and my little brother. So how it usually goes is the last person who used the cradle board, the baby would present them with a gift for sharing it with them, and baby would present, and then the cradle board would be smudged, and then baby would be placed in the cradle board. And man, that cradle board saved me, because that cradle board, baby slept baby slept, and I got to sleep, and really assured myself that swaddling help baby to really be assured that they're in a safe place.
Yeah.
And so for me, that cradle board was kind of like life-saving for me. And I've always used it with my kids thereafter. I always teach my kids, like my clients though, is make sure baby's at birth weight before you put baby in a cradle board, because babies can sleep for an extended period of time when they're in a cradle board. So you want to make sure that baby's at least up to birth weight, and then you can start using cradle board. And then some of them, I know they just had trainings here. Last 2 weeks, they had a cradle board for fathers, and so they're bringing that back. And I'm noticing that's an educational tool that a lot of people are bringing back, so that the new fathers and new young families know how to use it and know what the story is behind it as well. So I'm thankful for that. I always advocate to my clientele what it means, and I have handouts for the child's first laugh, the cradle board story, and I also have one for blessing of a newborn, those stories that go along with those as well.
Yeah, the cradle board also helped me with my first daughter too, because she was always crying, and my grandma said the same thing. Where's your cradle board? She wants a cradle board, and sure enough, had on a cradle board, and she did well with it. Also, the cradle board, I like what you said, that it grounds the baby, because that's the earth, right? That's the cedar that's made from the, made from cedars, a cradle board. And men usually in our culture make it, right? They gather and they make the cradle board. And there's certain stories and symbols what the cradle board means. Like, it's to me, it was like complex to learn it, but it's something that I'm really happy to be knowing that that's part of my culture. But, different cradle boards that I've seen since you and I've been traveling,
Yeah.
they're just amazing. And I'm like, how come Navajo cradle boards are not like that decorative?
Well, your Navajo cradle boards are similar to out here though.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
you guys use
yeah,
a similar style.
yeah. But ours is just really, I think
Yeah.
the cloth of it can be decorative, but the actual, like the board and
Yeah.
the rainbow that protects the baby is very just the wood.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, I should
Yeah.
decorate it.
Because we gotta be all extra in the Great Plains.
Yes, you do.
Yeah. I've seen cradle boards
Gotta
now where
fit,
they're
put a bead on it.
sash belt. Yeah. I've seen cradle boards now where they're really decorated. Like the
Yeah.
whole thing is woven and sash belt, and the hoop is decorated. Because my husband wanted to do that. He wanted to, because he's a woodworker, he wanted to burn designs on the cradle board. And I was
That's
like, I don't know about that.
Yeah, some designs with the wood, like burn it and like make a story of it, whatever. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've seen those. Yeah.
So just for folks on here, like cradle boards are something that I actually like across Indigenous communities, especially in Turtle Island, so the United States, Canada. We would use them in some form. So whether that's a cradle board or a baby basket or a hammock,
Moss bag.
we have always used them. They look different, but a lot of times the teachings are the same, as far as like what they mean.
Why
They
we use
often
it,
come
right?
together in two pieces, kind of bringing the mom and the baby and the father together. We have the bow to protect that baby. And it also literally, it's like a roll bar on a Jeep. It literally protects the baby too. If the cradle
Isn't
bar,
that amazing?
yeah,
That
like,
really
yep.
protects the baby. Yeah.
But I love kind of learning more about cradle boards, but I think it is something that, is important to recognize that for a very long time, Native people were villainized for using cradle boards, and they were thought to be abusive. And we had, non-Native providers for decades telling us that they were unsafe, that they weren't, our babies needed to be in cribs, our babies needed to be away from us, things like that. We had places where where CPS was called on them because they used a cradle board. And then, here we are, and again, Indigenous ways of knowing that everything that we're told about safe sleep, that is a cradle board. That's what a cradle board does, right? All of those safe sleep practices, a hard, firm surface, secure,
on their back,
right? All of that, that's what a cradle board does. And I know that, for many of our communities, we have teachings about when we go to sleep and we, when we dream that we're kind of going to that star world or to the holy people or to, kind of we're traveling to that other realm in our sleep. And so we've always known that sleep is a sensitive time, especially for an infant, which is why we put so much effort into the space that they sleep in,
the cradle board,
right? It wasn't, we didn't make a cradle board because that was just the easiest place for them to sleep, right?
We took time to beat it, to gather materials for it,
because we knew that baby was at risk, right? We knew that it was when they sleep and when they dream that we want them to come back, especially as you said, or when you're talking about the laughing party, when before a baby is completely here, right? And has made the decision to stay here, or they were allowed to stay here, whatever that teaching is. And so just the cradle board is a really important aspect of that. And so for healthcare providers, again, that are here that don't necessarily know those teachings, ask a family. We will share that with people and with our providers. And it's just good to be curious. And again, just ask those questions about it. If you see a family using a cradle board, or if you know a family is Native, which hopefully you do, know if a family is Native, ask if they're using a cradle board at home. And then if they say yes, say, I'm so glad, it's such a safe place for your baby to be, and it's going to make things so much easier for you. And I'm glad that you have access to one. Or if they say no, you can say oh, okay, I learned a lot about cradle boards at this kind of thing. And hey, I got the name of this person who makes cradle boards. I can give it to you if you want.
I know this lady named Oranez.
Right.
Her husband. Yeah. For me, growing up, I always saw the ghost beads on the cradle board.
Yep.
Not necessarily on the baby or mom. I've always grown up knowing and seeing in my community the ghost beads was hanging on the cradle board, in addition to the sacred stones, the turquoise or the white shell or the coral, depending sometimes on baby's gender, just depending on the prayers and the wishes of the family. So that's how I saw decorative. I think I've even seen one with the horse tail braided. Like a little horse tail. Yeah. So just different things. They're good intentions for their babies. They put it into the cradle board.
Yeah. In Dakota teachings, the cradle board would have, because we do pretty decorative, in plain style cradle boards are usually beaded, there's lots, and we would put the belly button in, in a turtle or a lizard, beaded turtle or lizard, and hang that from the cradle board until it's potentially time to bury it, or maybe they choose to keep it or something. I think I remember you, Aura. I think it was you that said you didn't bury your kids' belly buttons. You just kept them with you so that they would come home to you. Was that you who said that?
I still have them.
I was like,
some point I'll give it to my dad.
Belly buttons buried, and Aura's like, they're on my dresser.
My kids always come home.
So which is awesome though, right? Home is where you are. And
maybe it's why Annalisa came back and stays with me, and she's almost 22.
Maybe because you still have you kept it.
I have one of the girls that I'm like, oh shoot, which one is this?
I love that. Oh, cool. Thank you so much for sharing all that. I'm wondering, what's our time?
We still have half an hour if you guys still want to talk,
Cool.
or if we're
if there's any questions. I don't know, for the folks that are on the panel, if you have any specific questions around or have teachings to share, that you would like to share, because I know we have a diverse group of people listening on here.
While we're waiting for if anybody wants to pop in the Q&A with any questions you have or anything you want to share, even I just want to read a note up there that so there's a person by the name of Alyssa that's in Phoenix, Arizona. She's a non-Indigenous provider, an SLP. I don't know what that is.
Speech and language pathologist.
Working with a lot of Native families in the NICU and PICU. And she would like to connect with you, Aura. So do you have for more resources after discharge for the patients that they see?
So maybe you can message Alyssa on Zoom or share,
or you can share verbally your email, maybe, if you're open to it,
or she can type it in.
Let me type in my email address. I'm doing my personal email because I notice with our work we get switched around every 5 years. My email has been there for so long.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm noticing a lot of my Chinling, Pinion, Kienta moms, they get flown out to Phoenix. And what I'm trying to do now is work with them so that if they are in need of a breast pump, because they can use one in a NICU, but wherever they're staying, I want to make sure they have one there as well. So working with those moms to make sure they have that service available for them. It has its own challenges. So trying to overwork that.
Okay. So Aura's email, Aura Nez. I'm going to spell it for the person because she can't see your answer. So it's her name is ORA, the first name, and then Nez, Nez, and her email is native Keebler, like
best email ever.
Like Keebler L.
Yes. Like Keebler cookies.
Native Keebler at hotmail.com. So that's for Alyssa. And then we have a couple questions. Mark is gonna pop it in the chat now that it's open
for everyone.
Put that, you gotta click on everyone. Yeah, cool. Anyway, Mark knows what he's doing. I don't. I'll leave it to the experts. All right, so we do have a couple other questions. There you go. It's in the chat now that everybody can see. Couple questions that we have. What are the ways that providers can work with Native women to improve maternal health and maternal mental health? Ooh, that's a whole other set of webinars.
It is. Yeah. Well, and then Kelly's second question too, which, maybe we could just kind of clump them all together is what can be done in pregnancy to improve health outcomes. And, there's so much, like so much here, but I'm thinking, maybe why we have Aura on to kind of, things that you've seen, Aura, as far as what providers can do, or things not to do, which is, we probably have a long list there of just things not to do, and not cause harm. But
I think these kind of shared a lot in the last couple of days.
And Kelly, I don't know if you've been on our previous webinars, but I definitely, they're going to be public on the Nooni Project website. And so go there and watch them because we have covered a lot over the last 5 webinars. So or do you have kind of a start to an answer, some things that you've seen providers do that help improve health outcomes or protect maternal health for Native parents?
I think a lot of it, and it does go full circle, is just respecting mom, respecting her views on childbirth. And that's for every woman, for us out here, a lot of it was respecting the grandmothers, their views. Like here in the WIC program, we see a lot of grandmothers come in with this is after delivery or even before, and they already have their own views of how mom's going to feed baby or where she's going to deliver. And we just learn to respect those views and work with it. And then we invite them to share those things. I know a lot of our mothers-in-laws and our own, the grandmother are always wanting to be at the birth, and especially if it's a mom's first birth. And a lot of it is that advocacy that they're advocating for their children. So along the way, that's one of the best ways that we do is if that other support person is there, respect their views, and then asking them, do you have any traditional traditional any traditional beliefs that we need to know to make your birth more along the lines of your stories, so to make it a better outcome for them. I know working in the rural areas now, um, it's a little bit different. I'm stepping back and I have to know what that community is like and what that community provides. You can't just easily say, just go down to the store and go get this, where it's not even like that mother's milk tea. It's not that simple,
Right.
compared to living in a rural environment. We have to look at what is there and what really can mom do for her and her baby and her family. um, I know that there are some families. I've worked with one mom this week is she had a baby on Monday and she's going back to work next Monday, this coming Monday. That's an everyday real thing out here. Is that moms have to go back to work, and respecting that and saying, hey, how can we make this adjustment for you a little bit better realistically? How can we make it work for you? I can offer a breast pump, but is that really something that she's going to need and want? Is it easier for the whole family dynamic if she's giving formula? Is that a little bit easier than to pressure her to breastfeed more? A little bit of breastfeeding is better than none. So we always share that information with her, and then just depending on the area that they're on. And then sometimes they'll kind of give a pause and you can tell. And then you ask them, kind of like, what does dad say, or what does grandma say? And then they have to go back and say, this is what my grandmother says, if they're still there, and then what my mom says. So we have to hear and be willing to hear the whole aspect of a family's. And then a lot of our families out here is they don't all live in separate households. There's like a lot of families living in one household. That could be brother and brother's kids, grandma, grandpa, So we have to learn to acknowledge that there could be more than one family in that household. And how is that going to work for them? Especially like if we're a mom in terms of breastfeeding, that privacy, how is that going to help them, and how can we navigate that for them? So we're learning every day, new clients, different clients that come in. How do we respect them in a way where whatever their goal is, may it be their childbirth goal or their breastfeeding goal, how can we make it more realistic for them, not for us? And it's not our option, it's their option. So for the hospitals, I know a lot of women, like in the Chinling area, and the next nearest hospital is probably Shiprock. Some women would rather prefer to birth in Chinling because they have the traditional birthing techniques. And then some of them would rather birth, in the Gallup area because they have that rural benefit of getting things that they need on a whim. And then on the other hand, I have a mom who birthed in Shiprock. She lives like, I think, an hour and a half away in a rural environment. And that was like in Blanding, Utah. And yet she gets all of her services in Kayenta. That's another 2 hours away from her birthing hospital. So when you're providing services, it's like, okay, where did you give birth? And how can we help you to make it easier? And when WIC opens back up entirely, I'm going to see that as something that's difficult for a mom to navigate when they're asked to come in person. And then they're asked, like, for me, I'm seeing it like, if they need a special formula, they have to go back to the hospital they're being seen at. that's difficult, that's hard. So how do we make that easier and more reasonable for our clients is something I'm always trying to work on. So I'm really trying to build a good communication with each of the hospitals. And I have at least one contact person that I can message or I can get a hold of really quick and say, I need help for this mom. Can you help me out? And this is the service I need. So I'm trying to build that up again after after the pandemic. So that's kind of what's working for me. But a lot of it is just respecting their wishes and then see where they want it. And a lot of it, I'm trying to advocate for that fourth trimester. I was forgotten. After I had my baby, I was waiting for that phone call, my 6 weeks postpartum, because I know with one of my babies, was risk for GDM. So I was under the assumption that somebody was going to call me and follow up with me in terms of my pregnancy, my nutrition, to check on my numbers again, because I know Shiprock Hospital was doing that. And I'm like, okay, and I had to really call for myself and say, hey, am I somebody's going to follow up with me, right? Not just baby, but me. A lot of our women are forgotten after they have that baby. And it's a sad thing that we have to tell our women, call for yourself, call, ask them what other things that they need to do for you, don't get forgotten. So that's one of the big things I've seen is women getting forgotten after they have their babies, and to have them to advocate for themselves. And then another one locally, I'm noticing that is that if they miss an appointment, they say, oh, we'll call you back and reschedule you. And here it'll be like 2-3 months later and they still haven't gotten rescheduled. And it's like, hey, you need to call. If they didn't call you within a week, you need to call. So it's weeding through a lot of women to go find those,
That's scary
So,
though,
yeah.
especially in that postpartum, because you don't know, you might have a hemorrhage or something, you know what I mean? Or, I mean, we've heard stories and even in our communities that, moms have a hard time and, unfortunately some don't make it because of the lack of, um, a phone call or even just follow up or pushing back something that should have been done a long time ago, and that's just, that's sad actually.
Mhm.
Yeah. I love, and just want to reiterate listening to families. I think that's, such an important part, kind of getting to Kelly, kind of getting an additional answer to Kelly's question around like what can be done. Because, one thing I'll say, and I know, folks in this room and have heard me say it is not the responsibility of Native and for our Black sisters too, or relatives, it is not our responsibility to not die after birth.
Yep.
It is not our fault. We are perfect and amazing and are perfectly capable in an ideal of environment of surviving, after we have a baby. And too often though, it is blamed on Native people, and my friend Abigail Echo Hawk says like, stop blaming us for the problems that you all created,
Totally.
and stop, like, it's just not okay. And so, it is, we can't answer like this whole question just now because it's so compound, like there's so much into it.
Complex.
Yeah. But what I'll say is, it's not on us to not die. It's not on us to not be mentally ill. Like that is a community failing,
Yes.
right? It is a failure of society that moms are dying and moms are not well after having their baby. And it's on all of us to protect them. And the responsibility shouldn't be put on them. So, for healthcare providers, check your bias,
Yes.
like look at, how it is you treat families, recognize like your shortcomings as a provider, talk to people.
Your language, your body language, all that matters to us because we see it and we have a hard time trusting that system. I mean,
Yeah.
we still don't go back. Like, Andrew was saying, like, we don't want to go back to care that's failed us and harmed us. So, and then just listening to families,
yeah,
really
yeah.
listening to what we're saying.
And I don't know what Kelly's specific role is in community, but I truly believe that sending people home after they have their baby and not checking on them for 6 weeks postpartum is an egregious failing of the healthcare
sure.
system.
Yes. Yep.
We need to be seeing families and checking in on families way earlier. The mainstream midwifery model would be, seeing a family like at birth, 24 hours later, on day 3, week 1, week 2, you were going to be seen and checked on through that time. And in my state, 60% of deaths that occur after the birth of a baby occur within the first 45 days after a baby's born, right? 60% of deaths, of people that die of pregnancy related causes. So births from pregnancy to 1 year, and 60% of them are dying between the end of pregnancy and 45 days postpartum, and 45 days is week 6, right? Like that is such a huge issue. And again, it's easy for me to say as a non-healthcare provider, you need to see people more. I get it, and I get that you all are working within a system that is difficult too. And you have to, you have to see your people, and you have lots of patience and things like that. But just, like one really simple thing is just to see people sooner, and more often. And if you can't, get doulas on your staff, get home visitors, get public health nurses, hire people that can go and see these families, because that is going to make a huge difference, I think, in health outcomes.
For sure.
So yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I think about that.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
I think one more thing to add is an interpreter. That really needs to be, it wasn't one of my, I think for me was a personal experience with my dad when he got flown out. And he was in Flagstaff Hospital. They were talking to me and my mom, and we were constant contact with the hospital. It was during COVID. We couldn't visit him and be with him. And then at one point, I think he was out there for 2-3 days, and then he came to, and I'm like, okay, my big thing is somebody needs to tell him where he is. Somebody needs to tell him in Navajo where he is, what he's doing there, because the last thing he remembers, he was at home. And it took another day for them to get an interpreter for him, because it was like somebody, he needs to know what's going on with him and why he's there. And I think I see that a lot for some of our moms who only speak Navajo, or some of our families that are their first language is Navajo. They need to be told in their own primary language what's going on with them and that outcome for them in their healthcare plan. So I see that where we're missing that too as well, because they're under the assumption that everybody here knows English. Some like more different areas, their primary language is still Navajo.
Yeah, I love it.
Great.
Cool.
Thank you, Aura.
Thank you,
Shared
Aura.
a lot of information, really good stuff. It's good to see you.
Yes, it is. It's been a while. I think since
Arizona.
September.
I haven't been home in a while, so hopefully I'll make it there in November. But I definitely want to go back to, see you guys. And Cammie and I are supposed to do a half a marathon.
Oh
year.
yeah, that's not what I was excited about.
I was just like,
wait, that's gonna. Did you? I got Kim's like talking about going to Navajo, and she goes, Cammie and I are supposed to, and I got really excited because I thought she was gonna say we're gonna teach there and do something, and then she's like, we're gonna run a marathon, and I'm like, wah wah.
You're like, no, Tammy's coming to come see me.
I know, I love Aura. I'm gonna
go pick tea. Go pick tea. Go make some jam.
I'm so excited.
It's like when I got that banana pudding in Apache. Like she walked it out, and I was like, I could hardly contain myself with banana pudding and vanilla wafer. I
Oh
almost
my
died of
gosh.
excitement. Kim was laughing at me.
Yeah,
Hilarious.
we got invited to do another IBC course in Navajo. I think we're supposed to, it said January, but I don't know. But we're definitely gonna do some work there again next year. So we'll be
Yes.
there
Good.
some point, but
But
Yeah.
thank you so much, Aura.
Yeah.
It's always awesome hearing from
Yeah.
you, and we appreciate you always sharing so
Yeah.
fully and honestly.
Yep.
And
Thank you. I wish there was more peer counselors.
right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I don't think there's a plan to hire anymore. There's just 2 of us. So I'm pushing for it, and hopefully soon I'll be heard. See how that goes.
Because Aura's got to do other things, everybody.
Yes.
So we need
Yeah.
her to mentor other peer counselors
sure.
and
Oh, I
do
want
all
to
Yeah.
the things and
Get her
yeah,
IBCLC certification. I know you've been doing that
Yes,
for a
I
long
want
time.
that.
become a grandma.
Yep.
That'd be so fun. I'm like, I'm quitting everything. I become a grandma.
We got hire more peer counselors.
Well,
Go
thank
ahead.
you, Aura, for joining us. I'm so happy you could be here. It was nice to meet you. Love your shirt,
Yes.
and
Mhm.
hopefully we'll
Thank you.
someday in person.
Yes.
I'm super thankful for all the work that you do. It sounds amazing, and also probably incredibly frustrating and difficult because there are only 2 peer counselors. So I
For the
hope,
state of Delaware or for the state of
yeah,
Virginia. Like, can you
Yeah.
imagine? Like,
yeah,
I just like
that really speaks to me, because like that's how I see my work, is increasing access to resources, right? Like the resources is like my big sticking point of trying to increase resources for communities that need them. And that's why, I'm doing this work. So I appreciate it. Thank you everybody for joining us. Again, we have another 3 more webinars tomorrow. I don't know what what the topics are, because we just keep running through
we
them.
planned them so long
I know.
ago.
They're just
We forgot.
totally forgot. So check the website, nooniproject.com, if you know any other healthcare providers, non-Indigenous or Indigenous, or just people in general who want to come and listen to us talk and banter and be funny and hilarious
And
and
laugh, yeah.
laugh and cry. Hey, look, we made
Oh.
it through a whole day without crying.
Okay.
That's
I
good.
cannot
Yeah.
believe this.
We did it.
We did it.
We did it. Okay. Mark just gave me our schedule for tomorrow.
Okay.
So tomorrow, our morning one, and this is important for folks to know too, is ask a IBCLC anything. And so that requires you all participating and having some
People and
questions
questions.
and everything. So please come join, ask us your questions. We will do our best to answer them. Yep. And then so that's from 11 to 12:30 Eastern Standard Time.
Yes.
And then at 1:00 to 2:30, we have how are we as healthcare practitioners harming Indigenous families when it comes to breastfeeding? So that'll be awesome. Might cry there. All right. And then 3 to 4:30 is conversations with Indigenous IBCLCs, how milk is made and milk supply. I knew we were going to talk about how milk is made at some point.
Yes.
So that's our schedule for tomorrow. So we're looking forward to it. So
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Yay.
thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thanks for joining us. And spread the word. We will see you guys tomorrow.
Cool. Please join us.
Miigwech. Bamapi.
Bye.
Toksha.
Thank you. See you guys.